My son was almost 1 month old. He caught a cold, and so he was, totally stuffed up, coughing. And then there's one night I went to check him before I went to sleep. Something in me just didn't feel right. And this was midnight. Oh, my husband would take him to the doctor right now. The doctor later say, I'm glad you brought him in, because if it was maybe like another half an hour, he may not have made it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the But for Champagne podcast. Today, we have a guest you may recognize, and maybe for more reason than one. After we finish this podcast, you'll know why. Yulin Lee is with me today, and we have hosted her before because she is a fabulous money coach. Definitely want to follow her, make connection, ask questions. She is incredible. You just want to sit at the floor like as she's talking and soak up everything money related. So I'm so glad you're here, Yulin. But today we're here to talk about something else, another project that you've been working on. Tell us a little bit about it. First, champagne, right?
First champagne, that's right.
Always drink. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to invite me back. And I think my intention today is that we're going to have the most impactful conversation to talk about the spirit of motherhood.
I love that you set that intention. It's so important to know exactly where you want the conversation to go. It's so powerful.
Yeah. And because that's what this topic is all about. And, we're both women, we're both mothers. And so the conversation is around the movie that I was very fortunate to be part of. And it's called Moms Rising. So the whole movie is really about celebrating the spirit of motherhood.
Growing up, there was always a voice in the back of my head. And that voice said, you can have anything you want, you can do anything you want, and you can be anything you want. And that was the voice of my mother.
Right. And I want to tell you that this movie was not what I was expecting. Moms Rising, I'm thinking super positive and uplifting stories. And they are, but not in the way I expected. So tell me how that resonated with you when you came into the project, because it was already in process.
Yeah, it was in process. So I was invited to the project through one of the cast members in the movie. The movie had been in creation production for a while, and they were looking for a few more moms stories. And I was introduced to the director, and I think once he and I spoke, we really resonated with each other. I really love the idea of, taking this whole project of specifically making a movie to celebrate motherhood, but also me sharing my own journey, which is I have a very, very loving relationship with my mom, and my life, who I am, what I have today is all because of her. She made me who I am today. And so to me, that's very dear to my heart. And so we just got really, clicked and so I just became the part of the project.
And I have to say, we watched the movie. It was stunning and beautiful. And we had actually several generations watching the movie, which was really nice. We had some friends over, other mothers and their daughters, and even my niece was watching, and it was just super powerful. But what I really liked about the take was it is a documentary style, but with reenactments and things like that. But what I really liked was not all of the people sharing their mothering story were mothering their own children.
Yeah.
And that was what I wasn't expecting. That mother instinct transcends.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how that resonated with you.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and that's why I personally felt so connected to the movie myself too. And that's, as a money coach, I always ask this question, and that is, if money were your child, how would you nurture it? Because every single woman, whether you are biologically a mom or not, you have it in you in terms of how to nurture a new life and to help it to grow. And if we think about money as your child, you know exactly what you need to do. And that is, to me, just so empowering. And like you said, the stories in the movie of those ladies who just did amazing, just incredible things to save other people's children. And when you look at those, you're like, wow, women is or are the creator of this world.
Absolutely. And I think that you touched upon some really strong elements of it. I was really moved by several of the stories of, obviously, as we were having to share the tissue box because we were struggling to keep from crying because it was so beautiful. But I think that, often, like I said, I thought it was going to be like super uplifting, and it was, but there was these moments, these poignant moments of those turning points for these women to step in and step forward. I think of the woman from the concentration camp. She protected these children, these Dutch children that were just left outside the concentration camp to basically freeze to death.
Yeah.
Because as they say in the movie, they weren't even worth a bullet.
Yeah.
It was too expensive. And she saved these children. And she said, I'm doing it because I hope wherever my child is that I got separated from, someone is looking out for him.
Yeah.
And that is really where it comes in, that you realize that you can be a mother in so many different ways. And we'll talk about some of the other stories. But I always wondered, for me, like, could I love another child like I love my own children? I always wondered that. I talked about adoption. And then we hosted a child from Ukraine, Andy, and she was mine from the beginning. I was fiercely protective of her. I fought for her at school to have the classes she wanted. And it was just so natural. So it really is something that's just in us as that nurturing side.
Yeah. And then when you say it, that's just so natural. And that's the one point that I always like to bring up too, is like, for all of us as mothers, none of us went to the school of how to become a mom. We learn on the job.
Yes.
But then there's a instinctual part of us that we just know what to do. And I'll share a story with you. When my son was almost 1 month old, he caught a cold. And so he was, totally stuffed up, coughing. And a baby at that age, there's really nothing you can do, like not even that much medication you can give him. So we just kind of have to, let it, ride its course. And then there's one night I went to check him before I went to sleep. And something about it, I mean, he was still stuffed like how he had been for the last couple of days, but something in me just didn't feel right. And so I told my husband, like, I really want you to take him to the doctor right now. And this was midnight. And so he's like, okay, so he took him to the emergency room. And the doctor later said, I'm glad you brought him in, because if it was maybe like another half an hour, he may not have made it.
Oh, those instincts, that you just gave me the chills.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and so that's the thing, like, we all have that. And from this movie project too, that I realize for a lot of women, we think we're just a regular mom. There's nothing special about us, because I feel like, well, I have nothing extraordinary or special to share. I'm just a regular mom. And I think this idea of I'm just a regular mom actually doesn't really exist. I think every single woman, every single mom is an extraordinary mom.
Yeah. And I think that all of us have that, and we all get overwhelmed, and we have those days. And I can recall, I was working, and my daughter came up when I was trying to get dinner going, and I'm like, and she was pulling on me, on my clothes. And I was like, what? Because I was just like overwhelmed. And I turned around and she had a flower that she was trying to give me that she had picked. And I'm like, I felt like the worst mom ever, so I scooped her up and I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, I love this flower. Thank you so much. And it just really helps you remember that perspective, that they're looking up to you. And yes, we all have those moments, but it made me decide to get in a different line of work. I knew I did not want to be in a job that required so much of my time.
Yeah.
I was in training at the time, and when you're in corporate training, you can't be sick.
Mm-hmm.
You can't miss. If people, and I was working with hospitals, so I would have anywhere from 20 to 100 nurses that need to go through this training that day.
Mm-hmm.
There was no time for me to be sick. I literally remember around that same time, I would lay down and set a timer between two sessions as I waited for each person, group to come off shift, because I had a fever. I was not well, but I couldn't just bail.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we find those abilities of sacrifice.
Right. And then also the strength behind it, going back to, I think as women, we can all relate to this. Going back to my mom's story, when I was young, I was sick all the time. Like, I think, a few weeks after I was born, I started having diarrhea and just was always sick. And then until maybe about 2 or 3, then they found out that I had some kidney issues. I was literally always sick. And so now, having been a mother myself.
For your mom.
Yeah, like, just to imagine, and again, the life back then is not like what it is today, right? It was so much harder.
Mm-hmm.
And for her to be caring for this child, and she even said, I didn't know if you would survive. Like, I just couldn't tell, because if I didn't go to a hospital for 1 week, she would be super happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on until almost like when we came to the States when I was 13. So my entire childhood, I literally grew up in medicine. And she had to take me in to get shots until the point where both of my butt cheeks got hardened from the needle pokes, that they can no longer poke needles into my butt cheeks. So they had to move it to my arm. But that's the amount of medication
Poor
and
little baby.
how sick I have been. And again, it's like ordinary thing. It seems like ordinary, right? But now that I'm a mom, I was like, I can't imagine what that would have been like, what that was like for her to care for me in that way. And so I just feel like moms are really unsung heroes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm so grateful. My mom and dad helped out a lot when my kids were little. My mom would actually drive and meet me halfway between my house and work.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would literally take the bucket and put it in hers. I had like the little bucket, whatever that thing is called, the receiver in each car. We just pop her, move it to the other one. And then I would go back to work and mom would take her for the day, and so I was so grateful to have that support. And I look at people who don't have that support.
Yeah.
And I'm always one to say, like, if you are struggling or you need a day off, I'll watch your kids, or I'll take the baby, or my daughter loves watching kids. So I'll offer up Delaney and just say, we're here for you. So even now we have a friend who's a single mom, and now sometimes her daughter's not driving yet. So she'll say, can someone pick her up from school today? Because she goes to a private school, and so we're like, yeah, sure, we'll go get her. So it's just about having that support too, which I think moms are so much more naturally willing to give. Like in the story, we had the story we talked about earlier with the Dutch children, but another story in the movie that is so powerful is the woman who has, as far as I understood, no children, but she took on 600 children and decided that she was going to help them succeed. So want to tell a little bit about that part of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, she's just an incredible woman. She's a woman from, her name is Maria, and she's from Portugal.
My name is Maria from Portugal. At the age of 2 years old, I was adopted by Cristina, a poor refugee woman from Angola, a widow, mother of 6 children who worked as a cleaner. She worked really hard, and yet she still adopted me. I was her 7th child. At the age of 27 years old, a 24-hour layover in Bangladesh completely changed my life. I made a promise to change the life of 101 families.
And she happened to be in this part of the world in Asia, Southeast Asia, where she just ended up seeing lots of children on the streets. And she said, the one thing she said in the movie that really made an impression on me, which is, she said, for most people, when they look at this picture, they see poverty. And she said, for me, what I saw was opportunities, like potential. And so yeah, I mean, she had to go through, I'm not going to give too much away because I really want everybody to watch the movie. But, she had to go through breaking so many world records to be able to raise money.
Be the first woman for a lot of things from her country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that motherly love, like I said, it's there, even if you're not a biological mom.
So where can people see this movie? Because we're going to get this out so people are aware of it.
Yeah. So, with Mother's Day coming up in May, we thought we really want to share the movie because we want every single mom see this movie and feel that they are seen and that they're heard and that they're being recognized and celebrated. And so we are making the movie completely free right now, that you can just go to our website, and that is www.momsrising.film. And you can go on the website and just watch live streaming.
Yes, it's beautiful. And you can also donate if you want to support the movie getting into more areas, because you guys had an official launch day that you flew to, right? Tell us about that excitement.
Yeah. So
is this your first movie, Yulin?
Yes. Hopefully not the last. Not that I got a taste of it.
Now you got a taste of it. I love that.
Yeah. So we had the launch of the movie premiere in New York last November, and so we all flew there, and so we had a big celebration and also the viewing, and that was actually the first time I saw the whole movie as well, because I was one of the last cast member that got into the project. So yeah, tissues and we had to go on stage and really chat. And then I was just crying because, my mom has passed now, and I felt her in that room.
Yeah. I Can't see how you wouldn't. It was a beautiful, I can imagine all those women that I saw in the clips all together.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was just amazing.
Every single story was so amazing.
So do you think that this movie is great for moms to see?
Mhm.
But who else will really benefit? Like the kids, the husbands, the sons?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that question, because when we talk about motherhood, we often like automatically go, oh yeah, you're a mom. Like, we put people kind of in a category, but really it is for everyone to see. And I think what we shared yesterday, like you mentioned, your niece was there, your daughter was there, your mom was there, you were there. You had 3 generations of girls watching the movie. And I think we all walk away with different things depending on the stage that you're in life.
Yes.
I think if you're a young person watching this, hopefully you'll have a little bit more appreciation for your moms.
Yes. I hope so too.
Yeah, yeah. And then, but if you are a mom or a grandmother, I hope, you'll, as you watch this movie, you're like, yeah, I understand.
And I think what we often forget too, not only like dictated by the times they were in, but our moms were doing the best they could do for the most part, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Moms want to do the best for their children. And you look at some of the times that through the Depression or other times that people grew up, and you see how that affected them as mothers. I know for my great grandmother, growing up through that time, my grandmother was like, save everything, be, food, always make sure there's plenty of canned goods, things that they didn't have access to. And it changed a little bit how they were raising their children. And now we have so
Absolutely.
much opportunity,
Yeah.
too much sometimes coming in for, media and streams and information, that it's really hard to sometimes see that impact we can have. And then you hear, later, like you said, you heard those things, even though your mom never directly said them, you heard that emotion and that feeling from them.
Yeah.
And I think that we have an opportunity in this world that's more chaotic in some ways,
Mhm.
that we can really make that impact.
Absolutely. I think mothers are, not only creators, we're the biggest influencers in our kids' life. And that's another thing that I always say, when I'm working with my clients is, usually women in their midlife, that every single thing that they're doing to, better their own financial life or growing themselves, you're also doing it for your kids too, because guess what? Like, you're the role model no matter what. They watch you. And even if they grow up, they're still watching you. Right.
Yes.
And yeah, just, because we have all experienced it ourselves.
And I think that that's when you really realize, I always tell my daughters, you won't understand some of the reasons and things that I say until you're a mother.
Yeah.
And my mom used to say that to my brother,
Mm.
because my mom would come to see him play. He was like sports, phenom. He was the quarterback. He was the shortstop. He was the point guard. He was all the important positions in every sport he played, right? And she's like, you just don't know what it's like, how much I love you when I see you on this court. And I'm so proud of you. And he's like, Mom, and now he has a daughter, and he's like a total daughter dad. He has Clippies pinned to him, and she wipes her nose on his shirt. He doesn't care. It's like a completely different person.
Yeah.
And he's like, I understand now,
Yeah.
because I always describe it. It's like my heart is literally walking around. This
Right.
thing that I love so much is living, experiencing life, and I can only do so much as they get older to protect them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully those things that we did and said stuck with them
Yeah.
to keep them safe.
Yeah. And I think that's also another reason why I have so much respect for my mom, is that she did not grow up in a complete family. She did not grow up with any parental care or love, because they were just absent. She was born in the southern part of China during the war when the Japanese invaded China. And so they were running from places from the bombing. And my grandmother passed away during that, running away from the bombing. And so my mom was only 1. So she never got a chance to meet, to have her mom in her life. And then she basically just got passed around between different relatives. And eventually, my grandfather brought her back to Shanghai and left her with his parents. And he left for Hong Kong, and then eventually came to the States. And this is all in the 50s. And so my mom later on, grew up with her grandparents. While she never suffered or, never lacked anything, because they were a pretty well-off family back then, she never had any love, because if you think about an old traditional Chinese family, the only person that matters is the oldest grandchild. if it's a boy,
Right.
right? And so she wasn't the oldest. She was a girl. Nobody really cared.
Oh,
And so she never, like I said, she never starved or lacked anything materially. But imagine being in a big family, there's a lots of dynamics between the siblings, and she was there fending for herself because she didn't have parents to fend for her, in the big family setting. And so that's where I sometimes wonder, like, where did she have the strength? Where did she get that strength and the wisdom to have raised me in such a way that she did? Because she could have passed on to me something that was negative, that was lacking love, but that wasn't the case. And,
Right.
and so that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, she's such a big, great woman. But again, and after watching the movie, I also realized, if she was still alive and if you ask her, she would say, oh, I just thought I was just doing my thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is what I really want everyone to kind of hear and pay attention to, is that every one of us living our day-to-day life, that we think we're just doing whatever, doing, what we need to do. But there's so much strength and wisdom in our day-to-day choices. And we need to celebrate that.
Well, even recently for me, I know my daughters were very supportive in me making a change in my life recently and going through a fairly, I don't want to say easy divorce, but, making a decision that wasn't for me. And they were super supportive of that. And it really showed to me how they saw me, where I wanted them to respect me. And I didn't think if I stayed that they would do that. So really knowing how I was going to be perceived on that, for being that example and that role model, really made it important for me to do what was right for me.
Yeah.
So we have Mother's Day coming up. How
Yeah.
can we tell our listeners or reach out to them and let them know how we can celebrate mothers more?
Well, I would say, make a date with your mom, your daughter, even your husband, your siblings. Do a family get together with no other agenda than just being together, and then watch the movie together and really celebrate that precious time as a family that you get to spend, every minute with each other.
I really love that, just for no reason as well, because there's so much pressure on those types of events for the mom to be the host and to run everything.
Yeah.
And I still am able to play that card, and I let my mom do it, even if it's my house. I'm like, mom's taking over, because that's kind of like the matriarch role in our family. But I do love that idea of just taking that time, honoring them, and saying, we're going to sit here for this time period of this movie, and we're going to just think about how much we are lucky to have you in our lives.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you share that, and I think that's a really beautiful, kind of a sharing about. As you started watching the movie at the beginning, you thought, oh my God, these stories are, at some points, they felt heavy, but you walk away feeling very different.
Yes.
And again, there are a lot of things in our life that could feel heavy. But if you remember the beauty behind all that, and, I think I was sharing with you yesterday, I think, if everything was so easy and beautiful, and then there's nothing that makes mother great.
It's true. You have to have that comparison. And the movie did a beautiful job of it. You will definitely need some tissues. I think that will really be important. So I am so grateful you were here with us today. We are excited to promote your movie, share the links. Everything will be available. Is there anything you would like to say before we let you go, to our listeners?
Yeah. Well, so again, thank you so much for the opportunity. I would say, we're talking about celebrating mothers, but as a money coach for women, I really want to celebrate women. And so whether you're a mother or not today, I also wanted to remind you to take the time to celebrate yourself and celebrate your wins, your strength. And especially when it comes to money, oftentimes we get so vulnerable. We get we tend to get into the spiral of shame and blaming and critically judging ourselves. And so let this also be the reminder to drop all that and really allow your strength and your wisdom to shine through.
I could just listen to Yulin all day about all topics, but I love all of the information she shares. So if you do have any questions about the movie or about needing a money coach, which I think every woman should meet with Yulin and find out how she can help you. She really helped me be more focused and more purposeful in how I'm using and spending money and growing money, which is the big change for a lot of us. So I am so grateful you were here. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.